It was the winter of 2019, and I was 26 years old, house sitting for my uncle while he was away on a business trip. He lived alone in a decent-sized two-story house out in a semi-rural part of upstate New York. Not completely isolated, but the houses were spaced far apart, and at night it got dark. The kind of dark where if you shut off the lights, you couldn't see your hand in front of your face unless the moon was out. I was supposed to stay there for 4 nights, feed his cat, keep the driveway clear in case of snow, and bring in the mail. Easy. I had some online work to do, so it was a nice chance to be somewhere quiet and get stuff done without distractions. The first 2 nights were fine, uneventful, cold, but I had the fireplace going and was mostly on my laptop watching videos or editing photos. The cat Dexter would hang out with me, curl up on the couch. Pretty normal. It was the 3rd night when things got weird. I went to bed around 11 p.m. and fell asleep quickly. But I woke up at some point. I don't know exactly what time, but the room was still dark. I didn't wake up to a noise or anything. It was more like I felt something was off, like that feeling when you're being watched. I laid there completely still, staring at the ceiling. Then I heard something from downstairs. Just a soft shuffle, like someone dragging their feet across the hardwood floor. I sat up slowly and listened. At first I thought maybe it was Dexter, but then I remembered. I'd let him into the garage before bed because he kept knocking stuff over in the kitchen. So he wasn't inside. The house was supposed to be empty. I got out of bed and quietly opened the door. The upstairs hallway was cold and completely dark. I didn't turn on the light. I didn't want whoever was downstairs, if there was someone, to know I was up. I crept down the stairs, one hand on the wall to guide me. As I reached the bottom step, I could see that the light over the kitchen sink was on. I knew I hadn't left that on. I stood in the entryway for maybe a full minute, not hearing anything. The house was silent except for the fridge humming. I finally stepped into the kitchen. Nobody was there, but one of the chairs at the table was pulled out. It wasn't like that when I went to bed. Again, I told myself maybe I'd left it that way. Maybe I had left the light on. I was trying hard to rationalize things. I checked the back door and still locked. All the windows shut tight. No sign of anything being forced. I walked through the whole downstairs. Living room, bathroom, laundry room, empty. Then I opened the door to the garage. Dexter was sitting by the door, wide-eyed, tail puffed up like a bottle brush. That freaked me out more than anything. I brought him inside, locked the garage, and went back upstairs, this time with a knife from the kitchen tucked under my hoodie. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Every little noise made me jump, but nothing else happened. The next morning I found muddy footprints just inside the back door. Not fresh, they were half dried, but they definitely hadn't been there before. I called my uncle. He was already on a layover in Chicago and wouldn't be back for another 2 days. I didn't want to freak him out, so I downplayed it. Said I might have imagined some of it. That night, I made sure every single door and window was locked, drew all the blinds, and kept the lights on in a few rooms to make it look like more people were home. I brought Dexter into the bedroom with me and left the door open just a crack. I must have dozed off around 2 or 3 a.m. I woke up to a sound I'll never forget. The distinct creak of that same kitchen chair being dragged across the floor. I sat up, barely breathing. Then, and I swear this happened, I heard the faintest sound of footsteps on the stairs. Not fast, slow, deliberate. Dexter bolted from the room like a shot and hid under the bed. I grabbed the knife again and stood with my back against the wall, just staring at the open doorway. The footsteps got to the top of the stairs, then stopped. Silence. I stood there, heart pounding in my ears, waiting for something to appear in the doorway, but nothing ever did. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I called 911. The police showed up about 15 minutes later. They searched the whole house. No one inside, no signs of forced entry. But here's the part that still keeps me up some nights. When they checked the attic, which I hadn't even thought about, they found something. Not a person, but a blanket, a plastic bottle of water, a few wrappers, and a disposable camera. Like someone had been staying up there, watching. They never found whoever it was. There was a narrow crawl space in the attic that led to a panel in the garage. The officers said it was likely the person had slipped out when they heard me call the cops and disappeared into the woods behind the property. After that, I stayed at a friend's until my uncle came back. I told him everything, and he ended up installing cameras and motion lights. He never had any more problems, but I can't stop thinking about it. About how many nights I probably wasn't alone, about how whoever it was, they didn't want to rob the place. They were just there, watching. This happened when I was 17 during my last year of high school. It was one of the first times my parents ever left me alone overnight. They were going to visit my older brother at college for the weekend, and I'd begged them to let me stay behind. I had a couple of projects to finish, and honestly, I just wanted some time to myself. Eat junk food, binge horror movies, maybe play video games until sunrise. You know, teenager stuff. We live in a one-story ranch-style house on the outskirts of Columbus, Ohio. Not super remote, but our backyard runs up against a wooded area, and there aren't streetlights on our side of the road. It gets really dark, and on quiet nights you can hear coyotes and owls. It's peaceful, usually. So it's Saturday night, probably around 1:30 a.m. I was in the living room watching The Thing for the 100th time. The only light was the TV and a dim lamp in the corner. I had a blanket over me, a soda in hand, and was just starting to drift into that comfortable late-night zombie state. Then out of nowhere, I heard a loud knock. Not the doorbell, not a gentle tap. A single, solid knock on the front door. Like someone wanted my attention, but didn't want to be polite about it. I froze. Nobody knocks at 1:30 in the morning. At least not for anything good. I paused the movie and just listened. My heart was racing. The knock hadn't repeated, just one. I got up slowly, moved to the hallway that leads to the front door, and stood there. I didn't turn on the porch light. I didn't want whoever it was to know I was up. I peeked through the peephole. There was nobody there. I waited. A few seconds passed. Still nothing. Then I caught movement. Just a flicker from the side window near the porch. I stayed low and peeked again, and I swear, just past the edge of the window, I saw someone walking away from the house, slowly, calmly. They didn't go to a car. They just walked down the driveway and disappeared into the shadows toward the woods. I stayed by the door for a while, freaked out but unsure what to do. I didn't want to call the cops over a single knock and a weird dude walking away. Maybe it was a drunk guy who got the wrong house. That was the best case scenario I could think of. I triple-checked the locks, closed the blinds, and went to bed with a baseball bat next to me. I finally managed to fall asleep around 3 a.m. When I woke up around 10, I felt ridiculous. In the light of day, the whole thing felt like no big deal. I texted my parents to let them know everything was fine and spent the morning cleaning up a bit before they got home the next day. Then I took some trash out to the bins on the side of the house. That's when I saw it. On the siding, just next to the porch window, were faint smears. Greasy smudges like from someone's hands or face. Not quite fingerprints, but like someone had leaned against the wall. Even worse, down in the flower bed, partially pressed into the dirt, was a footprint. A bare footprint. Adult-sized. The heel was deep, like they'd been standing there a while. I went back inside, locked everything again, and decided I'd just write out the day and not mention it to my parents unless something else happened. That night, I went to bed earlier, around 11. I kept my phone on the charger next to me, and the bat was still under my bed. I figured the whole thing was over. Around 1 a.m., I woke up to the sound of the back door rattling. Not slamming, not banging, rattling, like someone was gently trying the handle over and over. I jumped out of bed, grabbed my phone, and tiptoed to the kitchen. The back door leads out onto the deck, and there's a curtain over the glass part of the door. I was just about to pull it back when I remembered something. There's a motion sensor light back there, and it hadn't turned on. Whoever was at the door was covering it or standing just out of range. I didn't pull the curtain. I backed away, locked myself in the bathroom, and called 911. The dispatcher stayed with me on the line, asking me to stay calm and keep quiet. A few minutes later, I heard the sound of tires on gravel. The police. By the time they checked everything, whoever it was had vanished again. No sign of a break-in, but they did find something near the back deck stairs. It was a folded piece of notebook paper stuck between two boards. Written in messy, uneven handwriting were the words, "You look lonely." The officers took it, said they'd do extra patrols around the neighborhood, They asked if anyone knew I'd be home alone. I said no, I hadn't told anyone. When my parents got back, they were freaked out. We installed a camera system and replaced every lock on the house. But here's the worst part. About 2 weeks later, I was doing laundry and I dropped a sock behind the dryer. When I moved the machine to get it, I found something that still makes my stomach turn. A used paper cup and a small torn photo. Not from our family albums. It was a blurry, zoomed-in picture of me, standing in the kitchen, through the window. It was taken from outside. It happened back in 2018 when I was 22 and living alone in a small one-bedroom apartment just outside of Columbus, Ohio. It wasn't the best neighborhood, but it wasn't terrible either. I worked late shifts at a warehouse, and on this particular night, I had the rare luxury of a day off. I decided to stay in, cook something decent, and just binge a few movies. The evening was quiet, chilly for late October. I remember I had the balcony door cracked just a bit to let in some air because my radiator was going crazy. Around 9 p.m., I had a pot of spaghetti going and the first Final Destination movie playing on my TV. Everything felt normal until I thought I heard something from outside. Just a soft thud. I muted the TV, listened. Nothing. It could have been someone in another unit, or even just something falling on a balcony above mine. I didn't think much of it and went back to the movie. About 20 minutes later, while I was eating, I heard it again. But louder, more distinct. A shuffle, like footsteps on wood. My balcony was on the second floor, so logically, nobody should have been able to get up there unless they were scaling the wall. But again, I told myself it was probably the upstairs neighbors on their balcony. I kept eating, even laughed a little at myself for being paranoid. Around 10:30, I just finished cleaning up and was lying on the couch when I heard a sound that made my stomach sink. A creak, like pressure on the floorboards. This time it came from the small hallway that led to my bedroom and bathroom. I froze. I live alone. No one should be in that hallway. I didn't move. I just stared toward the dark hallway, heart pounding. The TV was still playing quietly, but it might as well have been silent. I waited a good 30 seconds before getting up slowly and grabbing the closest thing to a weapon, a metal spatula. Not ideal, but it was heavy. I walked slowly down the hall. I checked the bathroom first. Empty. Then my bedroom. Also empty. Closet under the bed. Nothing. I even checked the front door. Still locked. The deadbolt was untouched. I felt stupid. Maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe I was just hyping myself up too much. Still, I didn't open the balcony again after that. I shut it, locked it, and drew the curtains. I was brushing my teeth around midnight when I heard it again. This time, it was unmistakable. Knocking. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Not at the front door, at the sliding glass door on my balcony. I ran out of the bathroom and peeked through the living room blinds. I couldn't see anything through the glass, but the porch light was off, so I reached for the switch and flicked it on. What I saw made me jump back and nearly fall over the couch. A man, just standing there, his face partially covered by a hoodie pulled tight around his head, his hands at his sides, just staring directly at me through the glass. I froze for a second, trying to process what I was seeing. How the hell did he even get up there? I yelled. Something like, "Get the hell out of here," and ran to grab my phone. When I came back, he was gone. Just like that. No noise, no footsteps, no sign of someone climbing down. I called the police. They came about 15 minutes later and did a walk around the building. They didn't find anyone. They asked if I had any enemies, if I owed anyone money, if I'd been having problems with anyone. Nothing. I was just a guy who worked night shifts and liked horror movies. The cops checked the balcony door. No signs of forced entry. They did say, though, that the fence below my balcony, the one separating the grass from the parking lot, had muddy scuff marks on it, like someone had climbed it. They left me with a report number and told me to call if anything else happened. That night I didn't sleep. I left every light on and sat in my bedroom with a kitchen knife in one hand and my phone in the other. The next morning, just as the sun was coming up, I went outside to get some air. I walked around the building to the back to look at the fence they'd mentioned. The scuff marks were definitely there. And something else. Wedged between 2 boards was a piece of dark fabric, like a torn corner of a hoodie. A few feet away in the dirt beneath my balcony, I noticed something half buried. I bent down and picked it up. It was a cheap disposable lighter, black, with a cracked spark wheel. I don't know why, but I kept it. Maybe because I wanted some kind of proof that it wasn't just in my head. I didn't see the guy again, ever. But for weeks after that, I had the same recurring dream. I'm asleep in bed. I hear the creak again, the hallway. But this time I can't move. I can't yell. I'm just lying there listening as someone walks slowly toward my bedroom. Then I wake up. After that, I moved in with a friend for a few months before getting a new place across town. First floor, bars on the windows, no balcony. To this day, I don't know what that guy wanted. He didn't try to break in. He didn't say a word. He just stood there. And for me, that's worse than anything.